Hello, folks. This is Alex, and I welcome you to Socialism Survival Podcast number 8. In this show, I will talk about GULAG. But before I get to the subject of this show, I'll do my usual virtual home management. First of all, I appreciate you, my listeners. Those who are coming back to this show every week, and those of you who are just discovering it. I invite all of you to join my forum, introduce yourself, and help me to make this show better by leaving your feedback, posting your questions, or sharing your testimony. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about GULAG. First, let's start with the definition. GULAG is not a word, rather it is an acronym for the Chief Administration of Corrective Labor Camps and Colonies. In Russian, Главное управление исправительно-трудовых лагерей и колоний. GULAG was the government agency that administered the penal labor camps of the Soviet Union. Eventually, by metonymy, the usage of GULAG began generally denoting the entire penal labor system in the USSR. Than any such penal system. Throughout Soviet history, beginning 1918, many different terms and types of camps were used, such as VCK, special purpose camps, forced labor camps, corrective labor camps, and even reintroduced katorga, something that existed earlier in Tsarist Russia. In Russian, we rarely use the word GULAG. You would simply say camps, and everyone knew what you are talking about. According to the Library of Congress archives, the Soviet system of forced labor camps was first established in 1919, different dates, as you see, under the GULAG, but it was not until the early 1930s that the camp's population reached significant numbers. By 1934, the GULAG, or Main Directorate for Corrective Labor Camps, you see there's also different translation, then under the GULAG successor organization, the NKVD, which translates from Russian as People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs, had several million inmates. Prisoners included murderers, thieves, and other common criminals, along with political and religious dissenters, better known as dissidents. The GULAG, whose camps were located mainly in remote regions of Siberia and the far north, made significant contributions to the Soviet economy in the period of Joseph Stalin. GULAG prisoners constructed the White Sea-Baltic Canal, the Moscow-Volga Canal, the Baikal-Amur main railroad line, numerous hydroelectric stations, and strategic roads and industrial enterprises in remote regions. GULAG manpower was also used for much of the country's lumbering and for the mining of coal, copper, and gold. Stalin constantly increased the number of projects assigned to the NKVD, which led to an increased reliance on its labor. The Gulag also served as a source of workers for economic projects independent of the NKVD, which contracted its prisoners out to various economic enterprises. Conditions in the camps were extremely harsh. Prisoners received inadequate food rations and insufficient clothing, which made it difficult to endure the severe weather and the long working hours. Sometimes the inmates were physically abused by camp guards. As a result, the death rate from exhaustion and disease in the camps was high. End of the quote. How many people actually died in Gulag? There are no exact stats. Although official Soviet data shows somewhere between 1 and 2 millions, we, those who lived in USSR, are used to astronomical mistakes in Soviets' calculations. So I suspect it was much more. While housing all types of criminals, camps were well known as mechanism for repressing political opposition, for holding prisoners of conscience. Even more broadly, Gulag has come to mean the Soviet repressive system itself, the set of procedures that prisoners once called the meat grinder, the arrests, the interrogations, the transport in unheated cattle cars, the forced labor, the destruction of families, the years spent in exile, the early and unnecessary deaths. Both from my father and grandfather, who were in Gulag for their faith in God, I've heard some stories about camps and how they survived it with God's help. I also have my own Gulag story. Although being too young to be among the survivors of Stalin's camps, I experienced my own hell of persecutions, or Gulag in a broad meaning of the word. For example, as a Soviet soldier, I was persecuted for my faith in God, and I was kept in army solitary cells. Later, I was transferred to Matrosskaya Tishina, a detention facility located in northern Moscow, known by the name of the street on which it is located. Literally, it translates as sailor's silence. It has operated as a prison since 1945, which means it was the part of Stalin's Gulag since the beginning of its operation. The formal name of the facility is Federal Budget Agency IZ-77/1, Office of the Federal Penitentiary Service of Russia in the city of Moscow. I was there in a strict regime cell with almost 50 people incarcerated. The cell was designed for only 30 people, and therefore only a small number of thieves had permanent beds. Others had to share the bed with others, with someone else, the bed full of lice and bed bugs. That is just a little piece of my own experience, as I am not ready yet to tell my full story, because it is so stressful even to think about, to recall all things I've been through. But having the little experience I had enables me to have a realistic imagination of a greater hell others were thrown in, including members of my own family. My grandpa was sent to one of Kolsky Peninsula labor camps. Although his faith in God brought him there. It also helped him to survive. Political officer of that camp needed someone to cook for him, do laundry, clean the house, etc. He chose my grandpa because he was known as the man of God, whose faith wouldn't allow him to poison, steal, or do any other harm to his boss. Later, that officer even allowed grandpa to pack some food and send it to his hungry family in the Ukraine. My dad was sentenced to 25 years of camps. What was his crime? Yes, he too believed in God, refused to join Red Army, and was considered the enemy. He was sent to the far east of Russia. Closest city to his camp was Komsomolsk on Amur. There he was assigned along with others to hard work of providing his beloved motherland with lumber. With a little food available, they learned to find their food in surrounding nature. I remember Dad told us that he used long sharp stick to catch wild salmon in the river. Depending on the season, they would eat various berries, nuts, and edible plants just to survive. Melting snow was the source for hydration, as it was around most of the time. Another two stories mentioned by my dad show unusual food choices by people desperate to survive camps of developed socialism. In a first story, camp guard's dog was killed and eaten. In second story, three men decided to escape. After a few months of absence, only one returned back to the camp. What happened to the two missing? First, one was eaten by two, and then second was eaten by the survivor. Without proper navigation in the wilderness, people tend to walk in circles while thinking they are walking straight. That explains why third man came back to the camp. After interrogation, he was shot and his body hanged for days in the camp yard as a reminder to others that running away is not a good idea. There are so many more similar stories, awful stories. Some people think they cannot bear listening to things like that anymore. Well, you need to overcome that if we want to overcome socialism. Socialists are cowards, not you. Stalin was coward. He was afraid of people's disagreement and opposition to his regime. That's why he needed GULAG. Soviet socialism leaders knew that they cannot win the argument in an open, free discussion without using iron fist. Like in this story, for example. Soviet atheist propagandist came to the village to convince people that God doesn't exist. He was very articulate in convincing simple, uneducated people that there is no God creator, that everything came into existence through evolution process when strongest species survived. At the end, he asked if there were any objections. After a long silence, when atheists looked triumphant, one old man stood up. Everyone stared at him, terrified. "Dear sir, I have a question." When agitator shook his head, allowing the question, old man continued. "Sir, if everything you just said is right, if evolution is true, as you said, please tell me how the sheep survived. Wolf brings many cubs with sharp teeth, and the sheep only one defenseless lamb. Tell me, if evolution is true and only fittest survive, how sheep could survive without God's protection? Instead of the answer, he got 25 years in the camps. And this was normal and regular practice by the Soviet socialistic regime. People were thrown in the camps with little or no reason at all. All arguments and objections were solved in a quick and easy way. Not for you. Not easy for you, of course. Easy for the regime. This way, everybody was convinced that socialism is right and anything else was wrong. Thanks to Alexander Isaievich Solzhenitsyn, we have a monumental work called The GULAG Archipelago. 3 volumes of his personal GULAG experience plus stories of many other people on both sides, persecutors and persecuted. Well, many times persecutors did a lousy job and were moved to the other side. Here is my warning to all American socialists who think they will take over whole America and will make life hard for other people. Learn from Soviet history and know that even if socialism will dominate, most of you will end up in the camps too. First, they will use you to commit atrocities, and then you will be eliminated either as a witness of the atrocities or as butchers. If regime will soften and decide to condemn previous administration's acts, similar to Khrushchev years after Stalin. Those who studied Soviet history should remember that Khrushchev condemned Stalin's cult of personality and the atrocities in his secret speech on February 25th, year 1956. However, Stalin was not publicly denounced, and following Soviet regime leaders, including Khrushchev himself, consolidated power around them. Although, to their credit, the Gulag population was reduced significantly, and conditions for inmates somewhat improved. But still, forced labor camps continued to exist, although on a small scale, into the Gorbachev period, and innocent people continued to suffer. As atheism continued to be a Soviet state religion, and the Iron Curtain was still in place, the following is the incomplete list of reasons why thousands of good Soviet citizens were still sent to the camps. Let's look at them. Reason number 1, anti-Soviet agitation and propaganda. Or for the convenience, I'll say ASAP. As soon as possible, we say for English, but for Russian history, we'll say ASAP when we mean anti-Soviet agitation and propaganda. If you openly spoke against Soviet regime and its ideology of socialism and communism, you'd still be charged with ASAP. If you preached the Bible openly or in a secret religious meetings, it was also ASAP. Printing Bibles, hymnals, free poetry, periodicals in a underground locations, ASAP. Unauthorized religious or political broadcasting listening and introducing others to such broadcasters as Radio Liberty, Voice of America, German Wave, BBC, ASAP. Okay, let's go on. Reason number 2. Involvement in emigration movement. Both Soviet Jews and Christians tried for many years to break through the Iron Curtain and emigrate either to Israel or any non-communist country where they could practice freely their religion. Even though a limited number of people were able to leave the USSR, some of them were simply expelled from the country. In any case, Soviet regime treated them as traitors, and the leaders of such movement were often imprisoned and sent to camps. I know personally some of them, as my parents were very active in immigration movement. Speaking of immigration movement, it is proper to mention academic Andrei Sakharov, the Nobel Prize winner, who used his position of access to the West to help the movement. And for that he paid a great price, being held under home arrest and also put in Soviet mental institution where significant damage to his health was done. To the great sorrow of all involved in immigration movement, he died shortly after being released. He was yet another victim of Soviet GULAG, the proof of its existence even during perestroika. Reason number 3. Refusal to serve in Soviet army based on religious grounds. Because Soviet law required every man over 18 to serve in military, such refusal was punishable with imprisonment. Some Christians, like Baptists, Pentecostals, and Adventists, sometimes were forced into construction branch of Soviet army, where they still refused to take the oath and were heavily abused, even murdered. Reason number 4. Refusal to work for Soviet state. Since all Soviet businesses were state-run, those who tried to avoid working for the advancement of socialism were considered parasites and subjected to forced labor. This list of reasons to be put in the camp or zona, it's another name for prison camp, may continue on and on. I think I should rename this podcast as Introduction to GULAG. Okay, this is Introduction to GULAG. Because for the normal length of my podcast, I just have enough time to introduce you to the subject. In my future podcasts, various facts of GULAG will be also discussed. However, this podcast would be incomplete without mentioning aspects of camp survival, because this is Socialism Survival podcast. In camps, prisoners were divided into those who went out on general assignment work every day and therefore died off, and those who got cushy job within the camp compound as like places like hospital or office, or as a cooks, bread cutters, inventory keepers, etc. And thereby were in a better position to survive. They were called by the other prisoners pridurki, translated in Gulag Archipelago as trustees. Well, as for me, it didn't matter how someone called them as long as they were alive, because the life was boring for officers and guards. They needed some sort of entertainment. Therefore, those who were talented actors, musicians, acrobats, etc., they had also good chance to survive as long as they could provide creative entertainment. I know that there were like famous choirs in some camps. Other camps were famous by theater or circus. Next, among women, many became sexual servants to officers and guards in order to survive. Among those who went on general assignment work, someone who was fit, those with warm shoes, coat, hat, etc., who knew how to feed and heal from the nature, also had a better chance for survival. And all of it was extremely important, especially if they planned to escape from the camp. Before I finish this podcast, let me take you on the GULAG experience tour. Close your eyes and relax. Now, imagine you are an average Soviet citizen, married, with 2 children, one just born, another just got in the school. You have an apartment you rent from the state. You have a job, but it doesn't pay enough for a family with 2 kids. At night, when your children are sleeping, you and your spouse go quietly to the balcony to chat about your life. You have neighbors who are also sitting quietly on their balcony. They are unhappy being unable to conceive a child and envy of you having 2 kids. But you are unaware that somebody just heard you saying, "Honey, I work so hard and what they are paying is not fair." Well, somebody just heard you accusing Soviet state of being unfair. Next morning, after you gone to work, your patriotic neighbor reported to secret police that you accused Soviet socialistic system of being unfair. "Anti-Soviet propaganda!" yells Red Commissar, shaking your neighbor's hand and then writing down your address. Following night, after you just fall asleep, someone knocks in your door. Something cracks inside you. Maybe it is just my neighbor needs something. You think to comfort yourself, dragging your body to the door. You look through the hole. Yes, he was right. It's your neighbor. You open the door, and the Red Commissar appears from behind your shaking neighbor. "You are so-and-so?" Commissar pronounced your name to identify. "Yes, you just said," trying to fight the fog that covers your eyes. Your spouse just heard the noise and, trying not to wake children, quietly enters the living room. "You have 5 minutes to dress and to take important things." You dress up quickly, throwing few things in a bag. You kiss your spouse, saying, "Honey, it's just a mistake. I'll be back soon." And you are gone. The rest of the night you spent in a jail. By the time you got there, you are fully awake. And you finally realize that it is not just a nightmare. It's your new reality. You still hope it was the mistake, that everything will be investigated and you'll be found innocent. Instead, in the morning you are brought to commissar's office, who brutally interrogates you, forcing you to admit that you are an American spy. You refuse to sign the paper that states your guilt against the Soviet people. They strip you off and take you to the solitary cell without any light, only bare, wet floor, cockroaches, rats, and bedbugs. They promised everything will be much better if you sign. They have a quota. They need just one more to reach the goal, and you are that man. Next morning, naked and swollen, you brought in the commissar's office again. A bowl of hot soup placed before you. It smells so good, but first you have to sign. Now you are ready to sign anything to get that soup, to get back your clothes, and never to get back in that dark cell again. Yes, you sign that you are British spy. Oh yes, today is British Day. Americans' Day was yesterday. And the clerk tells you your magic number, 15. It's the number of years you deserve for your crime. They let you eat half of your soup and take you to another cell, where gathered all who signed, and like you got their numbers. In a few days, they have enough people to pack a railroad cattle car, and you are escorted to railway along with others in the dark of the night. 10 days and nights with almost no food and water, without bathroom and shower, they take you like a cattle to the snowy wilderness. Where is our camp? You wonder. That's why you are here, you are told by guards. You will build it for yourself. Day by day, you cut the trees and you build first the houses for guards, then for you and other prisoners. About the half of those who came with you already dead, but you are a tough nut. Soon another cattle car arrives, but you have no pity for them. You are glad that the help arrived. In a few months, after you settle in a newly built camp, they allow you to write letters. As a reply letter without return address, you receive a message that your spouse was also arrested as co-conspirator and was sent to a different camp. But don't worry, writes a known friend. Your children are in good hands. They allowed your good neighbors to take care of them. Your good neighbors. Wake up! Wake up! It was just a bad dream. Nothing bad happened to you yet. Wake up, America, before bad dream becomes the reality. Stop it from becoming reality. Your children need you, not your neighbors. Now is the time for you. Now is the time for you. Here is my short Russian joke of the week. As we just found out, in Soviet time everything was good. only all this good was of bad quality. Well, that's my joke. Everything was good. We were told everything is good, but all this good was very bad quality. I know that person. All right, my Bible verse for this week is from Psalm 6, verses 3 and 4. These words were the prayer on the lips of all God's people who suffered. My soul is in anguish. How long, O Lord, how long? Turn, O Lord, and deliver me. Save me because of your unfailing love. Thank you for listening to Socialism Survival podcast. In order to listen to other podcasts, go to socialismsurvival.com and click podcast. You also will find this podcast on iTunes with the same name, Socialism Survival Podcast, Bitburner, or podcast.com. May God bless you and keep you. May God gives you His peace. Shalom.